At this time, please welcome to the stage the Chief Executive Officer of the Learning Counsel,
hello,
Miss LeiLani Coffin. So give her a big round of applause, everybody, and a big New Jersey welcome.
Just take a second and look around. You guys are all awesome. Like, look at this crowd. I mean, what a bunch of awesome people. We're really excited to be here. So this is my third year to Newark, the New Jersey area. First 2 years we were in Newark. Dr. Kavitz and I have been in 58 cities in the last 2 years. We started the Learning Counsel because we saw something happening that kind of scared me. I come from media. I've always been on the neutral ground between what's actually happening in education and what's actually happening in the industry. But I've been trained as an executive officer to run large troops, and actually I can write a strat plan in 24 hours, and I know all about how you run a business. But the thing that I saw happening in the last couple of years was that education didn't realize that it was about to be blown away by a major tsunami of what was happening in the vendor industry. I knew this because in the media, I had every vendor in the business coming to ask me, could I please do a demo for you, because they wanted press from me. They wanted me to put that out nationally and let everybody know, kind of what was going down with them. Well, I took a count one day and there was 7,000 vendors in a field where there used to be, what, the Big 10, the big publishers? Like superintendents, they do this, they do a thing where they're like, hey, so, handshake deal, once every 5 to 7 years, $50 million, we're done, right? Then you got everything you need. Now it's like constant. And the sheer volume of things is overwhelming for people. So I thought I needed to do something about that, which is what David and I are all about. We're trying to do something about that. So, do I need to, what? Oh, my clicker. Thank you. So my name's LeiLani Cauthen. It's kind of a difficult name. I was, born in the 60s, so my parents thought, let's name our kid LeiLani, even though I was raised on a farm in northern Minnesota. It means flower from heaven in Hawaiian. That's strange, right? Okay, so the Learning Counsel, we're news, we're an events organization, and I'm building a social media site right now in the Ukraine that's really all about people being able to take inventory and actually have a real analysis of what they have for coverage model of digital curriculum objects. We can talk to you more about that later. There's a couple of special reports you should consider downloading. The first one that we did 2 years ago was on the model architecture. David's going to talk a lot about that later today. The second one we did this last year is called the 71 Characteristics of Digital Curriculum. If you haven't seen that, a little bit of it in your workbook today, so you can sort of get an idea about that. And then there's other white papers that we have online for you to download so you can have a greater understanding of what's happening. So I want to talk to you a little bit about what happened on our national survey this last year, because Josh Cohen was one of our very revered winners. Josh, are you in the house yet? I don't know if he's here yet. Josh? Good man, good man. One of our winners. We took a survey and 540 schools and districts responded, a major amount, and of those, only 10 were winners that we flew down to Albuquerque, New Mexico last year for our annual national gathering. As you can see, Josh is one of them. I'm very proud of him. So you have one among you of your own that you can look to as an example. That survey also showed some reasons why you're making this digital transition. Asked of you, why are you doing this? Here's what you said, nationally. We need to increase student engagement. That wouldn't have been what you'd answered 20, 30 years ago. You weren't majorly concerned about that. You were, as institutions, you were mostly concerned about making sure people got their knowledge that they needed. But now, you're really concerned about engagement. Why? Are people that disengaged? I was disengaged a little bit when I was a kid. I don't know about you. Were you always on when you were in school, like always there? No. But now we're really concerned about that. And there's a lot of reasons for that, and I think you can come to conclusions of your own. But the other thing that we found out that was happening in the survey is that teachers are spending an average of 25% of their time nationally on search, random Googling around, to find digital curriculum. You're nodding your head, I know one of you guys does that already, and custom building digital curriculum, their own. 25% of their time. Divorce rates are up. Okay, this is a serious thing. This is a major difference than what it was only a couple of years ago. So the other thing that's happening is that the market, your market, education, is spending about $16.1 billion a year on hardware and major systems. So that includes the learning management systems, what I call the big iron software, 16.1 billion. This is not small potatoes anymore. It's major. And of that, you also find that 77% of students in the United States today have access to a device for a significant portion of the day, if not the whole day. So it's either a one-to-one environment, a BYOD environment, or there's laptop cards. But it's a significant portion of the day, 77%. That means we're reaching saturation in the United States, and it's completely transforming the market. There's a tremendous amount of investment money coming into the business of education now. So you're going to see a lot more change coming over time. I would guesstimate that we're just at the forefront of how sophisticated it's going to get. And it won't be much more sophisticated potentially in the hardware side so much as it's going to be super more sophisticated in the software side. And that's what we're here to talk to you about today. So the total market size of the software side, this is digital curriculum and also actually all curriculum. The total market size of all curriculum used to be about 25 billion about 3 years ago. It's dropped to about 23.3 billion. Does anyone in the room know why? You know why that would be? It's because 50% of what teachers and students are using today for digital curriculum is free. So we've lost in a market that's basically too big to fail, 1.8 billion in a couple years. That's what's happening to all the publishers. Jobs are being lost. Luckily, there's a lot of little baby publishers out there that are just starting up, and they've got really groovy stuff, and they're doing awesome things, and they're on a growth path. But if you look at what this slide says, basically what is happening in paper is it's nosedived off a cliff. It's lost over $10 billion in market cap in just a few years. But it hasn't been completely lost from the industry because it's shifted feet into the digital realm. Went from this side of paper to this side. We're reaching the delta in the next year. So that's what's happening nationally. So you've got about $7.2 billion that was spent last year by schools nationwide on digital curriculum. Most of that, if you look at the little tiny numbers in there, was not spent by the districts, not in an organized fashion. It's willy-nilly at your teacher level. Now, coming in from corporate officer, my concern about that is that, yeah, every teacher needs to pick out all their own stuff, but here's what happens. This teacher buys Brain Pop, and then this teacher over here buys Brain Pop, and then this teacher over here buys it, this one over there. There's nobody negotiating a better deal. So you're actually spending more than you need to in some instances because nobody's paying attention to the overall lay of the land of your mix of digital curriculum. In fact, when you take the textbook away from teachers, and this is what a lot of superintendents do, and they're like, oh, well, our teachers are going to build all their own stuff. It's going to be, you know, the internet's free. It's like awesome, right? So everything's going to be awesome. And then they're spending 25% of their time, and some of them are in your office later crying because they can't get it all done over the summer. They didn't expect to work over the summer anyway. You're not paying them to do it. So here they are, and they don't have a full coverage model, and they know they don't have a full coverage model, so they're asking you, can you still buy me the book, right? Because I don't have every standard covered yet, and I still need the book still. So that's what's actually happening. People are running up both rails. They're doing both right now, and that's a cost factor that's not sustainable. That's what's happening all over the country. So we're at that delta now. Normally, if you look at what's going to happen in other industries, you've got an even keel growth rate. But because we've reached saturation in devices in the last year and a half of 77%, we're very close to the top of what will be done. When we get to about 85%, we'll be done because there's some places in the country like the Amish communities and that kind of place, they're never going to adopt, okay? But at 85%, we will be at full saturation. So we're at an upsurge this year alone of 1.8 billion in new purchase for digital curriculum. This is the biggest digital curriculum purchase year on record and probably will be forever. Next year it will level off because people will have bought what they needed. So that's where we're at with digital curriculum. Where we're at with consumerization is that right now, even when we get to 9 billion by the end of this year of spend, we're still behind what's happening in the consumer fields. It's a multi-trillion-dollar movie, app, music market of digital things in the universe. And of it, only 0.08% is being spent on learning stuff. That's all you got in the market. But the rate of growth from the industry to build to learning objects is off the charts. And the amount of investment money coming into it is huge. Already, straight to consumer is 10.44 billion, and it will grow faster at a rate of 20 to 25% clip for the next 10 years. So its delta is already past what all schools are doing or will do in the next 10 years, and it will be at 10 times what it is in the next 10 years. What that means is that people are figuring out that you can buy digital learning right online. Books are going away. And there are tens of millions of objects, some of them free, a lot of them paid. The good stuff is scoped and sequenced out, it's paid. But that's what's happening on the internet right now. So 7,000 publishers, tens of millions of pieces of content. You do the math against the number of teachers you have, and you'll see that as the Learning Council, what we've seen, city by city, when we first started a couple years ago, we're going around, we're talking about this, and then we come back the next year, a whole bunch of new people have been employed. There's been about 100,000 new jobs in the last 2 years, just in the education sector, of titles like digital curriculum coordinator, chief academic officer. People are looking just specifically at digital objects. Because like you could spend all day, every day, and never get the whole internet done, right? For what's out there. So we're experiencing something I call the jerk. And a jerk is not just somebody who is a jerk. It's the feeling of being jerked forward. The jerk forwardness is what's happening when technology is at a revolution rate, RPMs. It's moving faster in the outside world than we're moving on the inside world, okay? That's when you feel the jerk. You feel like, oh my gosh, I just got another phone, and you know, it takes me forever to like figure out what all my apps are there and like put all the phone numbers in there and all the other stuff I gotta do. And then there's a new phone that came out, now I gotta do that, right? Every time you get another software upgrade, you're feeling the jerk, okay? It's like technology's doing something to you, right? And you feel like that's what's happening. There needs to be a balancing effort against that. And I'm going to talk a little bit at the end of this talk about what has to balance that and what education has to do to balance that feeling of being jerked around. Because technology can also be a jerk, right? Because like it broke and you lost all your stuff or somebody held you for ransom on the internet. It's horrible. So this is a little piece of one of the millions of pieces of digital curriculum that talk about the jerk, which is actually a physics term called the time rate of change of acceleration. That's what the jerk actually is. It's a physics term. The time rate of change of acceleration. And we are feeling right now like, wow, it's really moving fast, right? It's like more than anybody can keep up with as an individual human being. But what about as a collective sentience? Could we maybe keep up? Could we, as a collective, counterbalance the weight of technology? It's something to think about, and I'll talk more about that. But the time rate of change is happening because what's happened to your industry is instead of having an orderly progression, it atomized. Used to be books, like had everything scope and sequence together, like we were industrializing, you know, the model, and we were like, here's your stuff, and then you just ingest it as a student, like that's what your job is. Now, all of that knowledge out on the internet is mostly chunked down into tiny little pieces. It's been atomized. And now it's your job to figure out how to put it all back together like puzzle pieces. So we're at a jerk rate of 4 to 1. You're living right now 4 years to 1. And that is speeded up in only 3 years. 3 years ago, you were still living 1 year at a time. Now you're living 4 to 1. That's how fast the jerk rate is in the education sector. So consumerization is an important thing to understand because consumerization is the act of building products and services around the individual, asking you, what do you want? Like, do you want a pair of Paul Bond boots from Texas where you can step into the smushy sponge, send it off to them, and then they build you your custom pair of cowboy boots? Because that's what's happened in industrial America, complete customization. So consumerism is building to the individual. It's like what we call in the education market personalization or individualization or differentiation. That's what we call that in the education market, right? So consumerization as a concept is what the industry is building to now. There's a lot of products coming out of the industry. They're making it so that you can completely customize down to the individual. So consumerization is not necessarily a total evil, but it is what's necessarily happening. And it's happening faster in the industries that aren't trying to sell schools anything. They're going straight to the consumer. So to tell you a little bit more about consumerization and why it's an important threat, basically, in the education arena, is because in 2015, the online-only retailers in the top 500 grew by 16.9%, way faster than the rate of inflation in the United States. And of those, most of them have experienced declines in their actual storefronts. If you're in California, where we're at, I'm noticing store closings all over the place. We have a lot of open commercial real estate, as does every other state that I'm in. Part of the reason for that is not the economy. It's the fact that things have shifted away from physical retail to online. My garage is full of empty boxes, people. I'm an Amazon Prime member, and everything we got for Christmas came from Amazon Prime. I got my china that I needed for the holidays from Amazon Prime. I'm afraid to throw away all my boxes because when I went to college and had to move into my first apartment, remember boxes were scarce for you Gen Xers out there? It's like you couldn't get a box, right? Really? Like you would go to the grocery stores and they were on some sort of box consolidation movement where they got credits for turning in old cardboard, so they wouldn't give you their boxes. So it was like box scrounging was a big deal because you didn't want to pay for it from the UPS store. That's like, no, can you afford that fresh out of college? So you remember the box days? So if you're like me, you're saving all your boxes. So your garages are full. So anyway, so I think I could build a business on, cardboard collection. But anyway, so that's what's happening with the consumerization movement. The back-to-school shopping study that came out of Connectivity from 2016 that just came out has basically said that parents in America are spending a huge portion of their time, they start in July, doing back-to-school shopping online on their phones for their kids. So guess what all of the big publishers are doing that are going straight to they're selling consumer-oriented learning objects. They're advertising online in the back-to-school sections, right? And what's happening is the kids are like, of course, looking at their mom's phone and they're seeing the same ads for consumerized learning objects, right? As when they're shopping for their backpacks and everything else. And they're like, Mom, look, there's an ad here that I don't have to go to school anymore. I can just do this, right? You see what I'm saying? So consumerism is a threat. It used to be the threat that everybody worried about in education was, oh my gosh, the charter schools. Oh my gosh, private schools. And did you hear about this unschooling thing? It's like, really? Like people are going to do that? Those kids are not very social, right? That's the complaint about people that are homeschooled. The fact is, consumerism is the boogeyman that nobody looked for, but it's coming. So if you look on the internet, companies like Khan Academy, Coursera, Udacity, Disney, Sesame Street, a bajillion other companies on the internet, they're going straight at consumerism, including BrainPop will sell straight to you where you don't have to go through school. So you've got a situation in the market right now where people like ABC Mouse have a $1 billion market cap. I've been to their headquarters. They have like large cubicle farm of animators, right? They're building the good stuff. Your teachers can't build that kind of stuff. They're not animators, they're not developers. One school we've met on all of our travels was Alt School down in San Francisco because they've got a lot of Silicon Valley parents. They have 30 developers on staff for that school. That's the high watermark that we're going to, people. You're going to be looking for the same developers that we're looking for out in the industry. So the constraints holding back consumerism right now are the following. Let me just walk through this really quickly with you. So number one, you don't believe me. That's the number one constraint. People don't believe it. They went to school. They don't believe in a single lifetime that things can change that dramatically. Our generation didn't have to live through world wars where things changed dramatically in one lifetime, right? So we don't believe it. We went to school. We always went to a physical building. That's the way it's always going to be. Why would that ever happen to us? We don't believe. That's the only barrier. Belief is as thin as gossamer. You can cut right through that right now, right? And it's happening. Walmart had to close 269 stores in January. That's how fast it's happening. Walmart grew in my lifetime. Now it's going down. That's how fast it can happen. So it's spending all of its money, as is JCPenney and Macy's and Home Depot, on development. The employment for developers in the Ukraine and India is almost 100%. Because we don't have enough of them here. So that's the main constraint. The other constraint, in terms of your movement in the same direction to consumerize and deliver on your own, is that the UI UX, the user interface, user experience inside learning software is not quite good enough everywhere yet. It's not the high value, it's not Minecraft, right? You can't like enter the math world and like you pick out your avatar body and like, you can in some stuff, I'm just saying. Like, I think ST Math is here today. They've got some really cool programs. There's some really, really great stuff out there. But it's not a full coverage model yet, right? So you kind of still got to knit everything together. That's the work of this generation. So those are the constraints. But I want you to know there is an end point to this transformation. There is somewhere we can go. There is a promised land where schools survive and everything's fantastic. And that's what I want to talk about. So first of all, when we first got on the road, we want to talk about strategy all the time. Because that's where most schools are. They don't have a real strategy. They're willy-nillying it. They're sort of cobbling things together like, let's get devices, right? That's just a tactic. It's not really a strategy. So we talked for the first year about strategy, then the second year tactics. The whole nation, by the end of this year, will have leveled up to hot conversations about sustainability. What I mean by that is, how do we survive this? How do we keep having budget? Do we need to hire more people to just do curriculum looking at and purchasing? Like, how do we do this? So sustainability, seat time laws, all those things are in question, and as a nation, we're leveling up to that stage. Then after that, we're going to level up to the next stage, which is analytics, where we're actually looking at all the stuff that all this software is gathering and going, do we really need this? This dashboard is showing me 56,000 things, and I don't think I need to know all this stuff. Why are we measuring everything and everybody 9 ways to Sunday, right? That's like silly. This is like ridiculous how much. So I call some of it harmalytics or malalytics, because some of what's being analyzed is actually going to do some harm in the long term. But that'll be conversations we have in a couple of years. Then we're going to have conversations about design, which is where most of corporate America has already left, right? That's in the rearview mirror for them. That was like Wired magazine and Fast Company, like, so 10 years ago. So design is where the nation with the education sector is going to level up to in a couple of years. It's not quite there yet, but it's going to get there, where we're redesigning how we do things. We were just in Santa Ana Unified out in California. Kids were laying around on their beanbag chairs with their iPads up in the air, and they were doing their reading, and then at another table they were doing their mathematics on their Chromebooks, and they were using the whiteboard tables to do their little sums and then erasing it with their cuffs and putting it into the machine. Very different scenario than I see in most schools. That school has been redesigned to actually level up to a complete embedding of technology with their physical structure. Then we're going to reach what I call the age of experience, and that is the end point. That is where we are going, people, and I'll tell you why we're going there. It's because it's what is expected now by these generations. When you embed technology into everything, the only thing left to do is have a good experience, right? Like, should be leisure time for everyone. It's not quite that way. But the age of experience is what corporate America is already in. And here's some evidence of it. Google, if you enter the Google ecosystem, wants you in their ecosystem. Like, everything you do is in the Google world. Microsoft, everything is Microsoft. They don't talk to the Google world very well. And then Apple, their world, right? So in other words, they want to own you, not just from product, from full experience. Starbucks is one of the high experience brands, because your cup of coffee is just not as good if you get it from the local gas station, right? It's just not as good. But if you got it from Starbucks, it's like a theater of coffee, right? It's like you get to give a fake name. Like, I always use the name Blue. Like, my name is Blue. And then they give me my coffee, right? It's awesome. So that's high experience. And you're expecting to have that experience when you get there. What's it going to look like when education levels up to a high experience realm? Are you going to look like Disneyland? I hope so. Because everyone wants to go there, right? They are not going to stay home and just do it on their laptop at home if they can come to Disneyland, right? So that's what you're in for. Okay, let me put that in another perspective. Let's talk about the 4 elements of the universe so we can understand that this is an evolution. It's not a devolution of education. Space was the first frontier. What we were doing in the feudalism eras and for thousands of years as humans is we were defending and conquering spaces. People wanted to be king of this space or queen of that space. And my people are going to beat up your people if you come into my space, right? That's what was happening, wars and a lot of violence. Then later on, we started to have evolution into concerns about matter, right? That's the industrial era. And when we were all concerned about building things and we wanted the biggest houses and more stuff, right? Those are those generations. Then we actually leveled up to the age of energy, which is a concern about electronics. And even money is an energy. Money is what was exchanged for your work effort, which is an energy, right? Money itself is an energy mechanism. So market manipulation was part of the age of energy. Now we're leveling up to a new level. When we handle everything else, it's just like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we level up to a new thing, and that is a focus on time. Age of experience is a focus on quality time. Watch what the young people are doing right now. They want tiny houses. Why? Because then they can have a better life, okay? They're concerned about experience. They consider that knowledge is done. It's all on the internet, right? Knowledge is done. The ingestion and delivery and being told stuff, why do you have to tell me else? It's just like we were just talking about, right? So what you're talking about. It's done. That stuff is done. Now what I want is an experience. Give me an experience. So the packaging and building and fantasticness of experience through life is going to be what corporate America is going to level up to building and doing. You're going to see a whole bunch of new companies come out to do this. Disneyland and Disney brands are going to poof, probably blow up. But that's why the focus is on what it's in. And when you can actually visualize an educational institution that's providing a completely personalized, customized, valuable experience
to that person's individual need, that's where we're going. Okay, so you're looking at a future of expo education. Experience, the ability to knit together a private journey. Consider a teacher as a tour guide. That's the new role, right? You're like a travel planner from lowest standard to the highest standard. So they get all the way through that little maze of standards, poof, out the other end. You see that? So that means you're going to have to all become a little bit of a software guru. You're going to need to understand what's going on in the software field, from needs analysis to coding to face plating, you know, the prettiness of the website, the prettiness of their thing, and what actually happens inside software so that you can think with the experience of going through it, okay? So if you think only with like, I'm going to go digital, it's going to be awesome, I'm going to have a PDF and some links. No, that's not going to cut it. You're going to need to understand a little bit about what's going on in the software world yourself. One of the ways you can start is with our digital curriculum model architecture. Another way you can look at this is, we're going to go a lot over this today, what's actually going on inside software? What are the 6 major categories of what's going on in software? Is actions, aesthetics, controls, things that allow you to analyze things, individualizations, instructs, like actual learning things that are in there, and then mechanisms, stuff that does stuff, right? When you understand what's actually happening with digital curriculum, we're going to understand one really important thing, is that the low-value technical sophistication, the lowly, not very sophisticated stuff, a digital document, actually requires of your troops in the field way more instructional planning. They do a lot more work to deliver, and they can't possibly personalize that for everyone, because they have to get the object, encapsulate it into a lesson plan, and then deliver it. So they're more likely to do that for all 30 kids than they are to do that over and over again for 30 kids. But a machine can do that. A machine can have controls and levers inside of the software that allow you to gate and ungate and go in different directions inside a learning module, right? So the lowest value things cause more instructional planning. The highest value, which we like to call the holodeck, or room of requirement. If you've read Harry Potter, you know what I'm talking about by room of requirement, right? Anybody read Harry Potter? Okay, you know what I'm talking about. Star Trekkies, you guys know what's, okay, okay. So that arena is a little bit like what we're seeing coming out with Google virtual reality, you know, Google Cardboard. Entering your own space. There's also a place down in San Diego that has the whole floor of one classroom is a touchscreen that you can interact with. So imagine a room, all walls, ceiling, and floor is completely touch and completely interactive, and it's creating almost a holographic vision for you. This is high experience. This stuff exists today. So when you look at the low value stuff, your next level up is single loop animations. That's what you can do in Prezi and PowerPoint, that kind of stuff. Anybody can do that kind of thing. But as soon as you start to get up into coding and all those are things that individual teachers are not, they don't do that. So that's where you're going to need to look to the industry to fill in for you, to show you kind of what is the high watermark of good digital instructional design. So the real villain, and we do want to look for the problems to make sure that we know what we're dealing with so we can overcome them. What is the real villain in this piece? What's the problem? Well, I think the problem is not necessarily the technology or unions or lazy teachers or any of that stuff that you hear out in the field, right? That's not it. The problem is really a locked-in structural deficit. Education right now is not built to compete with the consumerism age. It doesn't react very quickly. It's stuck with Carnegie units, seat time, and all kinds of other things. But you can create in place. You can make changes that will cause a difference. So that structural deficit, that's the real villain. That's all it is a difference between the revolution rate of the outside world and the slower revolution rate of the inside world. You're not capable of changing at the rate of speed that you need to change. I'm not capable of making a discerning choice between tens of millions of potential learning apps on my own without some help. I'm not capable of that. I'm human. So if you look at the real villain, it's the difference between machines being able to be networked together, have stored all of knowledge known to mankind, and be able to give it back to you in a flash. Can you do that? Well, you can probably remember what you have for breakfast and a few other things, right? Maybe. the mind operates in a similar way, but it, as a human, doesn't have a wire that connects it to every other human, so that you can all share global knowledge together at once. But that is the counterweight that is coming. Youth has been very enamored of social media. Why? Because it is a counterweight to technology. Creative inception can happen between us. That is the gift we have that machines will never have. We can let our thought jump the rails. We're not binary code. We're not stuck with only what's been inputted. We can infer and create. And that is the age of experience. The ability to teach creativity and give people the ability to think outside the box. Make them do that. Because that's the one thing they can do as humans, machines will never be able to do. That's their competitive edge against machines. So that's where education is headed. And I want to leave you with one other thing for the rest of the day. As you listen to everyone else, think about the sum of the effect of technology and what we're dealing with. How weighty that is for humans and how they're going to have to compete against it. Because technology is not just all good, it's also a competitor in some respects. And then look at what tech is missing or unapplied. Takesha was one of my good friends I met the first time I came out here. And I learned a lot from her and from Josh and all the rest of the New Jerseyans when I first came, that this area uses love more than anything, which kind of blew me away. It was a really big change in perspective for me because, you know, coming from California and watching a lot of movies in my life, I thought I was coming into like the land of mafia, right? Like, really? Really? You guys use love? That's like a total change in perspective for me. It's like, wow. So it makes you think. There's a possibility in education today, just a little one in some places, that one of the technologies that's missing or unapplied is love. Love is a technology, people. And if you apply it correctly, you get results. And sometimes that's the absolutely missingest thing in the transition to technology, especially love for teachers who are struggling and don't know how to get there. You got to love them. So also look at what's natural in changed context. We're in a different context, and there's possibility that new things are more natural for this context than the things of old. And being natural is easier in the long run. Thank you.